So when my A is the A, that number in front just means the stretch. So how much am I stretching it apart? How much am I flipping it? So if that A is negative, that means the parabola is opening down, like this right here. See this negative guy right there. If it's positive number, any positive number, which way do you think it's going to open? Good. So here's my positive little Patricia right there. She's smiling. It's opening up. So that A, that number in front, tells me what's happening. Is it going up or down? So the vertex, if it's negative, this is the very top, that vertex. Would that be considered your maximum or your minimum? It's at the very top. Max. So you know if that's negative, you're also going to have a max. So you can put that right there. What if it's positive? What if that would be at the very bottom? What would that be? Your min. So that can also tell you that as well. The last part of A is if it's a positive or if it's a whole number versus a fraction. So we're not looking at the signs anymore. We're just looking if it's a whole number or a fraction. So if it's a whole number, you would think it would get fatter or wider, but it actually gets narrower, skinnier. Are we okay back there?
Yeah.
Okay. So if it's a whole number, it's going to be narrower. And so if it's a fraction, it would be wider. And this will make more sense when I show you what they look like. Maybe just put these notes down just so you can see while I'm doing the problems. I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like. So that's what my A has to do. That A, that number in front, has to do with if there's a stretch or if it's negative or positive. Does that make sense so far?
What is this for whole number?
Whole number is narrower. So like it would get skinnier. And I'll show you what that looks like. So I'll just show you that now. I'll go back to the screen if you need it, but here's my parent function. So x squared is always known as your parent function. This is Mama Bear. There she is. Do you see her? Here's Mama Bear. She's always starting at 0, 0. So I'll make sure you're paying attention up here. So I should see everyone's devices away. I should see us writing notes, and I should see our eyes up here. Yeah. So at 0, 0, that's my parent function. That's my Mama Bear, right? And so A is what would go in front of it. So here's their little child, right? Here's baby bear. If I make him negative, see how it flips the other direction? So now it's negative. If it's positive, it goes this way. If it's a whole number in front of it, see how it gets a little bit narrower? See that guy? So the bigger the whole number, if I made it 1,000,000, look how skinny he is. You can't even see him. If I made it like 10, see how he's getting skinnier? And if I made it a fraction, like 1/10, see how he's getting fatter? So the fraction, it just means it when you graph the points, it just actually ends up being wider. So that fraction just makes the parabola go a little bit wider because the points end up that way. So if like I were to graph 1, it would be a smaller number, so it would be a lot wider. And I can show you that in person in a second. It will make a little more sense. So if I made this negative, what would happen with this blue baby bear? He would flip. Look at him. Woo! Flipped. All right. So that's all we're learning about right now with the red. That's what the stretch means. Now the blue stands for the left or right. Remember, we learned this equation. So if we're doing, it's opposite of what you would think, right? So minus h means we're shifting to the right, and plus h means we're shifting to the left. So if I said minus h, I would shift right, and plus h would mean shifting left. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So if it's, if it's in parentheses, you're shifting either left or right. So minus h, shifting to the right, plus h, shifting left. So I'm moving that guy side to side, just like I did with Morgan earlier, right? And so the opposite of h, remember, was our axis of symmetry, our x-coordinate of our vertex. If our axis of symmetry is the opposite of h. So that's what we learned last class. Remember that? It'll make more sense. So that new vertex, in vertex form, we're just moving the vertex. We're moving this little baby bear around. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So if you're subtracting, so if this was like minus, we're going to do a few examples. But if this was like -5, I'd be shifting Mama Bear 5 to the right. If it was +5 in the parentheses, I would be shifting that parabola to the left. And so the difference is if it has to be in parentheses. If it's not, that means it's not moving left or right. And we'll see that in a second. Which one? Right here? Yeah. The opposite of H is axis of symmetry. So if it said -5 right here, your axis of symmetry would be at 5. Good question. I'll put this back up in a second, but I want you to see what it looks like now. So let's get rid of A. I want to go focus on one at a time. So now we're going to have parentheses before we have x squared. And I'm going to shift 10 to the right. See what we just did? I literally took him, I took Mama Bear, shifted them 10 to the right. That's it. Didn't change size or anything because we didn't mess with the A. Does that make sense? So in parentheses has to do with left and right. So Alon-Tooks, give me a number. How many do you want to go left? 20. Well, we can't really see them. Let's see if we can zoom out. There we go. See how we shifted 20 to the left? Do you guys see that? Cool. So that just means how much we're shifting it left and right. The last one is up and down. So plus K, say if it's plus K, it's actually the same as what we would think. We would shift up. And if it's minus K, we would shift down. No, you can come back. You can come back. So plus K means you're shifting up, and minus K means you're shifting down. It's also your min or max, depending on that A. And then lastly, it's your y coordinate of your vertex. And I'll show you what that looks like. And so basically, if we're not shifting left or right, sometimes it will just be up and down. You can just leave it x squared. If there's nothing in the parentheses, you can just leave it x squared. And I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so I'm going to go back on here real quick. I'll put it back up in a second. So this was left or right, right? So if I want to just move up and down, and there's no left and right, I don't even need parentheses. So if I want to go 5 up, I'm just going to go plus 5, and let me zoom in a little bit. And you can see that we literally took it and we moved 5 up. Do you guys see that? So I took the same parabola, moved 5 up. What if I wanted to go down? What would I put? -2, right? So I just took that parabola, it's always starting at 0, 0, and I moved it 2 down. If you're moving left or right, that's when you have to do the parentheses. So if I wanted to move 2 down and 3 to the right, it would look something like this. See how I took Mama Bear, I moved her 3 to the right and 2 down. So we're just kind of moving it around. The only time it would look different is if I put something in front of it. So if I put a fraction in front of it, what would happen with Baby Bear? Wider, right? So if I did like 1/10, for example. See how he's really, really wide?
But it's still up.
It's still over and down, but he just got wider. If I put a whole number, it would get narrower, right? So if I put like 10, see how narrow he is? What if I put -10? What would happen to the parabola? He would flip. Negative Nancy. Look at her. She's frowning. And so that's what we're doing today. We're just going through and like figuring out what the transformation was. And I made up that little song to help you with this because I know sometimes it can get confusing, but I'll do that after these 2 examples. So the first example I'm going to give you is y equals, you're writing this on the bottom now. So on the bottom, we're doing our examples. Make sure you're not writing as big as I am because I go a little bit underneath, but you're writing 2 examples and then just writing the words that go along with it. Okay, so how I did it, this is how big I did mine, just so you can kind of scope it out. So the bottom, those are my examples. So I'm still using the same colors. You guys see it? You guys see it? This is how I'm writing my examples. Or you can just get it done. Okay. So at y equals 2, and you're writing it across parentheses x minus 3 squared plus 5. And we're going to just figure out what's happening with that transformation. What's that? No, you're writing it all across, so it looks something like this. Like it's on the bottom. So it looks like this. So now on the bottom, we're just breaking each part of it. You guys see what I'm saying? Like right here. It's all across it, and we're breaking each part down. So you need a all right. So this should still be folded this way or cut. And so let's look at first the 2, right? My A. I'm still going to do it in this color. If it's a whole number, is it going to be skinnier or fatter? Or wider or narrower? Narrower or skinnier, right? Narrower. We also know since it's positive, is it going to be opening up or down? Good. So since it's positive, we're opening up. And since it's narrower because we have a whole number. Now let's figure out what's going on over here. In the parentheses, you know you're shifting left and right. So if it's minus 3, would I be shifting to the left or the right? Right? So I'm shifting how many to the right? 3. Good. 3 to the right. And my axis of symmetry would be x equals what? Positive 30. Right? You're shifting 3 to the right. And then the last one would be if I'm plus 5 right here, I'm shifting up 5. It's also going to be, if this is positive, am I going to have a min or max right here? A minimum, right? So my minimum will be 5. That means the smallest my y will be is 5. And it's also your y coordinate. Does this make sense so far? Okay, cool. I'm going to put one more example underneath it, and so if you want to get started on doing it, you can, but I'll go over it with you in a minute. And then we're just practicing it. I'll show you the song and dance, and then practice sides out. BB3, you're going to be able to finish it in here.
So just BB3?
Just BB3. Yeah, so you're either shifting it, or sometimes we'll see the graph and you have to tell me the equation. What did it do? So which way did it shift? And we'll go over that in the practice. Okay, so the second one was y equals negative 1/2 x plus 5 minus 2. So see if you can put that one underneath. You can write it small, or you can write it right on your notebook or somewhere, and just figure out what's the transformation for each step. The biggest mistake I saw in the mini quiz so far, make sure you're not forgetting about that square. The square is what's making it quadratic. If you don't put the square, it means it's linear. It's the same thing. Your equation's the same way, but I want to make sure we're dealing with quadratics, so that 2's got to be there. So break it down just like we just did. And when you're done, you guys can start gluing. I'll wait a few minutes, but if you guys want glue, I have glue, so you can glue it right into your survival guide. Does anyone need some? Anyone need glue to your survival guide? I'll put one in each table. Anyone else need glue? Me? let's go over it. So, if this is negative, who can raise their hand and tell me, or we could just write the A down. Who can, for oral communication grade, tell me what's going on? So, you can tell me.
This is negative. It's going to be
Well, negative, it is going to be y, but that's not because it's negative. It's going to be y because it's a what? Fraction. So, because it's a fraction, it will be wider. And then since it's negative, what direction is it going to be facing, Zaire? Down, right? Then negative Nancy over here. Beautiful. Who wants to help me with the next one for oral communication? Yeah. Perfect. Shift left 5.
Then
The axis of symmetry, or my x coordinate my vertex, is x equals negative 5. And last one, Jonathan. I switched these colors. I'm sorry. Yep, shifts down to. Has mixed up these colors. And then, do we have a minimum or a maximum?
Maximum.
Yep. So our max is negative 2. That's also our y what? Good. Y coordinate. Beautiful. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, I'm going to take you through one example on the worksheet each. You'll be able to finish it. Just for the video-wise, so that people watching can see one example of each. And then I'll teach you that little song. So if you can take, it's either yellow or white on your desk, it says practice worksheet. It looks like this. Does everyone have this down? So if you need my book, you can borrow it. So this is the first one. All you're doing is explaining what's happening. And so we can look, I'll start with the hardest one so we can see what I expect for each one. So I'm going to start with my A. So since my A is positive, what do I know about the parabola? Is it opening up or down? Good. So right here, it opens up. We're just breaking it apart. And if it's a whole number, is it wider or narrower? Narrower, right? Silly word. It's actually it's word. Then we go over here, -1. And so we know if it's in parentheses, we're moving left and right? If there is no parentheses like these over here, we're not moving left or right. This one we are. So will we be moving to the left or the right?
Right.
Good. So right, 1. And then what about over here? That K. If it's plus K, up 2. So that's all I need to do. So we're just writing what the parabola is doing. What's the transformation? Does that make sense? I'm just going to go through one example of each. So the next section is graphs. Do you guys see that? And so just make sure, a lot of people are getting confused with this. What's all that's happening in G? It flips. It's also known as like reflecting over the x-axis. That's what it says on IXL. So reflecting over the x-axis is the same thing as this. The graph, we're writing the equation of what's going on. So like, for example, this is always starting at 0, 0, right? And so what's happening with this? What is it shifting? 3 to the right. Do you guys see that? So if it's shifting 3 to the right, would that be in the parentheses or outside of it? Yeah, so it'd be y equals x. And would it be minus or plus? Good. Is it going up or down? No. So that's my equation. You're either doing, none of them are changing size, so you don't need to worry about the A for any of these 6 graphs. Does that make sense? Or the IXL. This is how the IXL looks too. Half of it's like this, half of it's like the beginning part. All right. Now, last one that I'm going to go over, this is how half your mini quiz is going to look. And so it's saying basically what's happening. So I'm going to do B. And so I need to break it apart. First of all, opens down would mean it's my A, right? So make sure you're labeling each part of it and narrow it. So these would have to do with your A. And a vertex, that means when I have my graph, it's at 3, -6, right? 3, 4, 5, 6. So here's your new vertex. It's a little more down. This is baby bear. Mama bear is always starting at what? 0, 0. So you can either figure out, okay, my x-coordinate is -h. So, or you can do it this way. And so, moving right, how much are we moving right from here to here? Over 3. So we're 3 to the right. And then how many down? Good. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we just need to write this equation. So it opens down. What sign am I going to have if it opens down? Negative, right? And narrower. Is that a whole number or a fraction? Whole number, right? So you can pick any whole number. This is how it's going to look on your quiz. So if you want to use 1,000, use 1,000. If you want to use like 5, go for it. So all that I'm looking for is that it's a whole number and that it's negative.
So it doesn't matter what number we choose.
Doesn't matter as long as it's a whole number. Which one? This one?
Yeah, like why do you put one?
Because narrower means it's going to be a whole number, fraction means it's wider. So down here, when it says opens wider right here, what would you have? A fraction. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what fraction.
Nope. Just make sure you don't use 1 because 1 means it's doing nothing. Then we have, if it's shifting right 3, how would I write that in the parentheses? Good. -3, don't forget about that square. And down 6, what would be on the outside? Beautiful. That's my equation. And with your mini quiz, literally half of it is exactly like this. I just changed the numbers.
So for the mini quiz, it doesn't matter what number you
Yes. Like for the A, it doesn't matter. For the, like it says opens wider, I just need to know that you know it's a fraction. Or if it's positive, I know it opens up. All right. So I'm gonna pause this. I'll show you the little song.